Now some of you will be thinking, well, finally we got to the numbering system that we all already know and that we're already used to, where you've got 207 marbles, you just write that as 207 for 207. So does this mean we've reached the climax, so the completion of this chapter on counting? And the answer to that is no. No, that would not be doing math by research. When we come at mathematics with a exploratory research mindset, or any subject for that matter, there's no end to the questioning and rethinking that can be asking. Just because we reached a point that we're already familiar with, that's not where you end. That's the beginning of the exploration. So we've come to a point where, yeah, this makes sense. We realize that it's helpful to package marbles together into packages, and because we're human beings with 10 hands, it's helpful to count off packages in terms of the 10 fingers that we have on our hands. And it's helpful to put these packages of packages into larger and larger packages, and the really big packages, they can get a lot bigger than this. The really big packages help us to account for the big numbers, and then we gradually have leftovers in smaller and smaller packages, and so those smaller packages help us to account for the smaller refined number of marbles that we have left over after we take care of the bigger bulk of them, and so it was helpful to organize them in this way. And then we have several different ideas on how we can symbolically write this packaging scheme without having to draw all of these marbles. And when I did the one-handed system, I really liked my squares with my dots inside of them, and then my stray marbles left over. So this was 2 medium packages, 4 small packages, and 1 left over. We found out that, or we talked about the fact that in our modern European writing system that comes from Indo-Arabic roots, we decided along the way, a group of people agreed, and it's kind of been handed down to us, that we were going to just use these symbols. Oops, 0. Well, 0's the crucial one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we don't have to go any higher than that, because once we get past 9, we start packaging things together, and then we just start writing these numbers together, one next to each other, to describe our successively larger and larger packages as we go along. Now this system works great, but again, it's important to understand what are the essentials and what are the non-essentials. Well, there's a number of different things that could be done here. We've got a system that works, and as long as you have a group of people that agree, okay, we're going to use a 2-handed packaging system, we're going to use these symbols to describe the possible number of fingers that we might have to use on our hands for any particular collection of marbles or set of packages of some given size. This works, but this is one system of doing things, and if we all agree to the system, then it's consistent, and we can get, for a fixed number of marbles, we'll get the same symbolic representation every time, and that's great. That's what we're looking for, is consistency. But it could be done. It could be done other ways. The 2-handed system, not everybody's always done the 2-handed system. Babylonians had a different way of counting that wasn't based on the 2-handed system. Romans had quite a different one that was kind of a combination of 1 hands and 2 hands and other ways of thinking about things. Or even if we agree, let's say that we agree that we're going to use a 2-handed system. Well, these symbols, there's nothing universal about them. Chinese, if they want to write 5, they don't write this symbol. In China, you write some symbol that looks something like that. In the Arab world, if you want 4, you don't write this symbol, you write something that looks like this. Now, the Chinese and the Arabs are still using a two-handed system for their computations, at least in modern times, just as English-speaking folks are, but they have different symbols. As I say, ancient Babylonians used not just different symbols, but a different counting system altogether. So the question is, are we satisfied with this system? Now, we're gonna use it. We're gonna use the base 10 two-handed packaging system because that's what our culture has agreed on, and it's important to learn, and it's important for, it's our mathematical alphabet for communicating with one another, so that we can communicate numerical quantities with each other. But for the sake of being mathematical thinkers and researchers and being able to solve mathematical problems in the future, it's important to exercise that part of our brain that is able to think for ourselves and say, well, if I was, okay, now I understand how this system works. And hopefully most of you understand the way that this two-handed packaging system, also known as the base 10 system, works. If you don't, if you're a child in school, hopefully your parent or teacher can do a better job of explaining it to you than I have. But let's say that for those of us who understand how this two-handed packaging system, this base 10 system works, it's still worthwhile to go back and exercise our brains and think, well, if I was doing it over from scratch, if I was doing it myself, now that I have these tools at my disposal and I know some of the ways to make things work, what might I come up if I was going back and doing it over from scratch, but I have these ideas. Would I improve upon it anyway? Would I change? Would I use a two-handed system? Would I use these symbols? Is there something that's a bit more intuitive than the two-handed system? Something that's more intuitive than these symbols that makes more sense to me, or is more aesthetically pleasing to me, prettier, or maybe has some advantage that it's easier to learn, or what are some other ways to think about it? And so, in fact, when I was making one of the earlier videos that we already looked at in this counting section, I had another idea for how I might have come up with an entirely different, not entirely different, but related, but different counting system if I was starting over somewhat from scratch. So I'm going to talk about that in the next video. Until that time, you can maybe go through some of the previous notes and think through for yourself is how might you do things differently.